The encounter. James brushed the thick layer of dust off the metallic surface of the ancient artifact. The dim light of his flashlight reflected off its intricate carvings. He was deep inside an abandoned alien ruin, a place no human had ventured into before. His exploration gear beeped faintly, warning him of unstable surroundings, but James was too intrigued to stop. This was no ordinary ruin. It felt like a hidden treasure chest waiting to be unlocked. As he carefully lifted the small, oddly shaped object, he realized it was heavier than it looked. The artifact was shaped like a lamp, but unlike any lamp he had seen on Earth. Strange symbols ran along its curves, glowing faintly as he touched them. His heart raced with excitement. Could this be some kind of alien device? A weapon? A relic of a long-lost civilization? James wiped the lamp clean with his sleeve. Suddenly, a faint hum filled the air. Startled, he looked around, but the ruin was still silent except for the sound of his breathing. Ignoring his instincts to run, James held the lamp tighter and rubbed the surface to remove more dirt. That's when it happened. A burst of golden light erupted from the lamp, blinding James for a moment. He stumbled back, shielding his eyes, as the light coiled and twisted like a living thing. A figure began to form within the glow, tall, radiant, and undeniably alien. When the light dimmed, James found himself face to face with a stunning alien woman. Her translucent blue skin shimmered like stardust, and her glowing golden eyes stared at him with a mixture of curiosity and authority. She wore flowing, ethereal robes that seemed to ripple even in the still air. Her presence was otherworldly, yet there was something oddly comforting about her. Who are you?" James stammered, taking a cautious step back. The alien woman tilted her head slightly, as if amused by his reaction. Her voice was melodic yet commanding. "I am Zara, bound to this lamp for eternity. And you, human, are my new master." "Master?" James echoed, his voice cracking. "What are you talking about?" Zara sighed, a hint of annoyance crossing her otherwise calm face. "I am a genie, a being created to serve the one who possesses this lamp. By ancient laws, I am compelled to grant you one wish." James blinked, trying to process her words. A genie? A wish? This sounded like something out of a fairy tale, not real life. But the evidence was standing right in front of him, glowing and majestic. "A wish," James repeated slowly, his mind racing. If this was real, then the possibilities were endless. Riches, power, knowledge. He could ask for anything. But something about Zara's expression gave him pause. She didn't look happy to be here. In fact, there was a flicker of sadness in her golden eyes. "Yes," Zara said, her voice quieter now. "But choose wisely. Wishes come with consequences." James frowned, his curiosity deepening. "Consequences? What kind of consequences?" Zara hesitated, her gaze dropping for the first time. "The act of granting a wish is not without cost. The universe demands balance, and sometimes the price is greater than the reward." She met his eyes again, and there was a plea hidden in her gaze. "Many before you have been blinded by greed and ignored my warnings. None of them met a happy end." James studied her carefully. There was more to this story, he was sure of it. Why was she bound to this lamp? Who made these rules? And why did she seem almost human in her emotions? Instead of jumping to make a wish, James asked, "How did you end up like this? Why are you bound to this lamp?" Zara's expression hardened, and she straightened her posture. "That is not your concern," she said firmly. But James noticed the way her hands clenched at her sides. Whatever her story was, it was painful. "You don't seem happy about any of this," James said cautiously. "If you don't want to grant wishes, why are you doing this?" Zara's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, James thought she might tell them the truth. But then she straightened again, her regal demeanor returning. "Your time is limited, human. Make your wish or leave this place. The choice is yours." James hesitated. His instincts told him to tread carefully, but his curiosity was burning brighter than ever. This wasn't just a chance encounter. It felt like fate had brought him here for a reason. Taking a deep breath, James made his decision. He wasn't going to rush into a wish, not without understanding what was truly at stake. Looking Zara in the eyes, he said, "I'll make my wish. But first, I want to know more about you and this lamp. I want to understand." Zara stared at him, her golden eyes widening in surprise. No one had ever said those words to her before. For the first time in centuries, she felt a glimmer of hope. But in the shadows of the ruin, unseen by James and Zara, something stirred. The act of summoning the Genie had awakened an ancient force, and danger was already on its way. The impossible wish. The air was heavy with tension as Zara stared at James, her golden eyes wide with disbelief. The silence between them felt like it stretched for hours, but it was only seconds. You wish for my freedom?" Zara finally asked, her voice faltering. For the first time, the commanding, regal tone she carried was replaced by genuine shock. No one had ever uttered those words to her before. James stood firm, his gaze unwavering. "Yes, I don't want riches or power. I want you to be free." Zara shook her head, stepping back as if his words were a physical blow. Her shimmering robes rippled, and a faint glow surrounded her as she tried to steady herself. "Do you have any idea what you're asking?" she said, her voice sharp but laced with something else. "Fear." James crossed his arms. "I'm asking for your chains to be broken. That's all." Zara's laughter echoed through the ancient chamber, but it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was bitter, almost pained. "You think it's that simple? You think you can just wish me free, and I'll walk away unbound like some fairy tale? No, human. The cosmos doesn't work like that." "Then explain it to me," James replied, his tone firm. "What's stopping you? What are the consequences you're so afraid of?" Zara's golden eyes flashed with anger, but it quickly melted into sadness. "The ancient laws bind me. They are older than stars, forged by the hands of those who sought to control beings like me. If you wish for my freedom, you're not just defying those laws. You're challenging the entities that created them." "Entities?" James asked, his curiosity piqued. She nodded, her gaze distant, as if she were recalling a memory from long ago. "They are the guardians of balance, the keepers of cosmic order. They do not tolerate change. If you try to break these chains, they will come for us both." James felt a chill run down his spine, but he refused to back down. "I'm willing to take that risk," he said. "You don't deserve to be a prisoner." Zara stared at him, her expression unreadable. For centuries, she had encountered masters who were selfish, cruel, or blindly ambitious. But this human, he was different. His wish wasn't for himself but for her. It made her question everything she had believed about humans. "You're a fool," she said softly. "A kind, brave fool. But if this is truly your wish, then I am bound to fulfill it." She stepped closer, raising her hands, which began to glow with a golden light. The symbols etched on the lamp pulsed in response, filling the room with an eerie hum. The ground beneath them trembled slightly, and the air grew thick with energy. "Once I begin the ritual, there's no turning back," Zara warned. "The guardians will sense the disturbance. They will come. And they will not stop until either I am destroyed or you are." James's heartbeat quickened, but he nodded. "Do it." Zara took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she began to chant in a language James couldn't understand. The light around her intensified, and the symbols on the lamp started to dissolve, as if melting away. Each word she spoke seemed to carry weight, shaking the very foundation of the ruin. But then, as Zara's voice reached a crescendo, a deafening roar echoed through the chamber. The golden glow around her flickered, and she staggered back, her face pale. "No," she whispered. "They're here." James turned to see a tear forming in the fabric of reality itself. From the rift emerged towering figures, their forms cloaked in swirling darkness, and their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The Guardians had arrived. Their presence was overwhelming, their mere existence radiating power and authority. The largest of them stepped forward, its booming voice shaking the walls. "You dare defy the laws of creation, Genie. And you, human, do you understand the price of your arrogance?" James clenched his fists, refusing to back down despite the fear clawing at his chest. "I understand that no one deserves to live in chains," he shot back. "Not her. Not anyone." The Guardian's glowing eyes narrowed. "You presume to challenge us. Mortal, you are nothing but dust compared to the will of the cosmos." Zara stepped in front of James, her glowing hands raised defensively. "This was my doing. Punish me if you must, but leave him out of this." The Guardian's laughter was cold and cruel. "You think to protect him. You are the one who dragged him into this, and now you will both pay the price." The other Guardians began to advance, their forms shifting and expanding, filling the chamber with darkness. James looked at Zara, who seemed ready to collapse from the strain of the interrupted ritual. He knew they couldn't fight these beings head-on, but he wasn't ready to give up. "Zara," he said urgently, "is there a way out of here?" She hesitated, then nodded weakly. "The Starfield Nexus. It's a dimensional refuge, but it won't hold them for long." "Then let's go," James said, grabbing her hand. "We'll figure out the rest later." Zara hesitated for only a moment before summoning the last of her strength. She raised her hand, and a swirling portal of light appeared. Together, they leaped through just as the Guardians unleashed a blast of energy, narrowly escaping destruction. On the other side, they found themselves in a realm of endless stars and shimmering light. It was breathtaking, but James knew they weren't safe yet. Zara sank to her knees, her glow dimmed. "This is only temporary," she said weakly. "They'll find us soon." James knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll be ready. I made a promise to free you, and I'm not giving up now." Zara looked at him, her expression a mix of gratitude and sorrow. "You're risking everything for me, human. I hope you understand what that means." James smiled faintly. "I understand one thing. No one deserves to live as a slave, not even a Genie." As they prepared for the next step in their journey, the stars around them seemed to shimmer with hope and danger alike. The fight was far from over, but James and Zara were determined to face it together. The Cosmic Guardians. The Starfield Nexus stretched infinitely, its swirling colors and drifting lights giving it an almost tranquil beauty. But James felt anything but calm. The events of the last few minutes replayed in his mind. The Guardian's wrath, the collapsing ruins, and Zara's near collapse. He looked at her now, kneeling beside a crystal-like structure, her shimmering form dim and fragile. She was struggling to catch her breath, her golden eyes filled with an exhaustion that seemed deeper than physical fatigue. "You don't have much time," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They'll find us soon." James knelt beside her, his mind racing. The Guardians were unlike anything he had ever encountered, powerful beings that seemed to radiate authority over existence itself. "What are these Guardians, really?" he asked. "Why do they care so much about keeping you trapped?" Zara looked at him, her expression heavy with centuries of burden. "The Guardians are not alive in the way we are. They are manifestations of the universe's laws. Pure order given form. To them, I am not a person. I'm a tool, created to serve, and nothing more." James clenched his fists, anger rising within him. "That's not right. You're not a tool. You're—" He hesitated, searching for the right words. "You're alive. You deserve to make your own choices." Zara smiled faintly, a flicker of warmth breaking through her weariness. "Your kind has a strange way of thinking, human. It's refreshing." Before James could reply, the peaceful starfield rippled violently. The calm, swirling colors darkened, and the temperature seemed to drop. Zara's expression hardened as she pushed herself to her feet, swaying slightly. "They're here," she said. James turned to see the air splitting apart like a shattered mirror. Through the fracture stepped the cosmic guardians, their towering forms even more intimidating in the Nexus. Their bodies were cloaked in shifting shadows, their glowing eyes piercing and cold. The largest among them stepped forward, its voice reverberating through the space like 1,000 thunderclaps. "You cannot hide in the Nexus, Genie. The laws demand balance, and your defiance has tipped the scales." Zara stepped in front of James, her body tense despite her exhaustion. "I won't let you hurt him." He didn't know what he was asking. The Guardian's gaze shifted to James, its glowing eyes narrowing. Ignorance does not absolve guilt. The human's wish has unleashed chaos, and he will pay the price. James stepped forward, his heart pounding. "I made the wish, and I stand by it," he said firmly. "You can't keep her as a prisoner forever." The Guardian tilted its head, as if amused by James's boldness. "You are insignificant, mortal, a speck of dust in the grand design of the cosmos. What makes you think you can challenge us?" James didn't flinch. "Because someone has to. Just because you're powerful doesn't mean you're right." The starfield trembled as the other Guardians began to surround them. Zara's hands glowed faintly as she prepared to defend herself and James, but her energy was fading fast. She couldn't hold them off for long. The lead Guardian raised a massive hand, dark energy swirling around its palm. "Enough of this. The Genie will be destroyed, and the human will be erased from existence." "Wait," James shouted, desperation in his voice. He glanced at Zara, who shook her head, silently urging him to run. But James wasn't about to abandon her. He racked his brain, trying to think of a way to outsmart these beings. And then it hit him. "You said you're bound by the laws of the cosmos," James said, his voice steady despite his fear. "What if I invoke one of those laws?" The Guardians froze, their glowing eyes locking onto him. The lead Guardian's voice was cold and measured. "Explain yourself." James took a deep breath. He had no idea if this would work, but he had to try. "You exist to enforce balance, right? To maintain order. Then destroying Zara would create an imbalance. She's tied to this lamp, and if you destroy her, the lamp becomes useless. That's a waste of cosmic resources, isn't it?" Zara blinked, looking at James with a mix of confusion and admiration. The Guardians, however, seemed to hesitate. The lead Guardian lowered its hand slightly, its glowing eyes narrowing. "You think you can trap us in our own logic," it said, its tone dangerous. "The balance is not so easily manipulated." James pressed on, ignoring the pounding in his chest. "Maybe not, but you can't ignore it either. If you destroy her, you're violating the very laws you claim to uphold. And if you erase me, you're interfering with a mortal's free will. Isn't that also against the rules?" The Guardians exchanged a silent glance, their forms flickering slightly as if they were considering his words. The lead Guardian's voice was colder than ever when it finally spoke. "You are clever, human, but your defiance will not save you." James braced himself as the Guardian raised its hand again, but this time, Zara stepped forward, her glowing hands raised high. "Enough," she shouted, her voice resonating through the starfield. The Guardians paused, their eyes fixed on her. Zara's glow intensified, and for a moment, she seemed more like the powerful being she truly was. "If balance is what you seek, then I propose a trial. Let the human prove his worth. If he fails, you may take us both, but if he succeeds, I go free." The Guardians seemed to deliberate, their forms shifting like smoke caught in a breeze. Finally, the lead Guardian nodded. "Very well. The trial will determine your fate." Before James could ask what the trial entailed, the starfield around them dissolved, replaced by a dark, labyrinthine void. The Guardian's voice echoed through the space. "Survive, human. Prove your resolve, or perish." As the void began to shift and pulse with unknown dangers, James glanced at Zara. She gave him a faint, encouraging smile. "Don't give up," she whispered. "I believe in you." And with that, the trial began. Escape to the starfields. The labyrinth vanished, and James stumbled forward, gasping for air. The void had been a test of resolve, filled with illusions and traps that toyed with his mind and nearly broke his spirit. But he had survived. Barely. Now, as he looked around, he found himself back in the starfield with Zara, her glowing figure dimmer than ever. "You did it," she said weakly, managing a faint smile. But there was no time to celebrate. The starfield shuddered again. A fissure opened in the distance, and the cosmic guardians emerged, their towering forms as intimidating as ever. Their voices overlapped in a symphony of cold authority. "The trial has ended, human. You have proven your resolve. But this changes nothing. The Genie cannot be freed." James's fists clenched. "You agreed to the trial. She earned her freedom, and so did I." The lead guardian stepped forward, its glowing eyes narrowing. "The trial determined your courage, mortal, not our permission to break the laws of the cosmos. The Genie remains bound." James felt a surge of frustration. These beings were relentless, their logic impenetrable. He turned to Zara, whose expression was resigned. For centuries, she had endured the unyielding grip of the Guardians, and now she seemed ready to accept defeat once more. But James wasn't. "No," he said, his voice firm. "I didn't come this far to let you win. If you won't honor the trial, I'll find another way." The Guardians laughed, a deep, resonant sound that made the starfield tremble. "Another way? You are but a mortal. What power do you think you hold here?" James didn't have an answer, yet, but he wasn't about to give up. He turned to Zara, his mind racing. "You said this place, the Starfield Nexus, is a refuge, right? A space between dimensions." Zara nodded slowly, unsure of where he was going with this. "Yes, but it's not a fortress. It can't hold them forever." James glanced at the shimmering lights around them, an idea forming in his mind. "But it's connected to everything, isn't it? Different dimensions, timelines, energies." Zara's eyes widened slightly. "Yes, in theory." James turned back to the Guardians, his resolve hardening. "Then I'm making another wish." The Guardians stiffened, their glowing eyes narrowing. "You cannot make another wish," the lead Guardian said. "The laws permit only one." James smirked, the glint of determination in his eyes. "Who said I was making it for me?" Before the Guardians could react, James turned to Zara. "I wish for you to have the power to free yourself." Zara gasped, her entire body freezing as the weight of his words sank in. "James, you can't." "I can," he interrupted, his voice steady. "And I will." The Guardians roared in unison, their forms crackling with raw energy. "You dare to defy the laws again. This wish is forbidden." James stepped closer to Zara, ignoring the rising chaos around them. "You deserve your freedom, Zara. Take it. Do what you need to do." Tears glimmered in Zara's golden eyes as she placed her hands on his. "You don't understand. If I take this wish, the Guardians will unleash everything to destroy us." James gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Let them try." The Guardians surged forward, their massive forms blotting out the light of the starfield. Zara hesitated for only a moment before her hands began to glow, the faint light building into a brilliant blaze. The symbols on her body lit up one by one, and the Starfield Nexus itself seemed to react, its shimmering lights converging around her. "You cannot do this," the lead Guardian bellowed, its voice shaking the cosmos. "The Genie's power must remain contained." Zara's voice rang out, clear and powerful. "No more. I will no longer be your prisoner." With a final surge of light, Zara's chains shattered, the golden bindings around her dissolving into stardust. Her entire form radiated with newfound energy, and for the first time in centuries, she felt whole. Free. The Guardians recoiled, their forms flickering. The balance they had enforced for eons was unraveling, and they could feel it. But they were not ready to surrender. "You have doomed yourself, Genie," the lead guardian snarled. "Your freedom will bring ruin to all." Zara stepped forward, her glowing figure towering with newfound strength. "No," she said, her voice steady. "My freedom will bring balance. A true balance, one not built on the suffering of others." She raised her hands, and the starfield erupted in a cascade of light. The guardians howled as the energy overwhelmed them, their forms dissolving into the void. For the first time, the Nexus was calm, silent. James staggered back, the sheer force of the moment leaving him breathless. He looked at Zara, who turned to him, her expression soft and grateful. "You risked everything for me," she said. "Why?" James shrugged, a tired smile on his face. "Because someone had to. And I couldn't stand the thought of you being stuck in that lamp forever." Zara stepped closer, her glowing hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You're different from any master I've ever known." "Thank you, James." As the starfield began to stabilize, Zara raised her hand, creating a portal to the material world. "Come," she said. "This fight is over, but our journey is just beginning." James nodded, stepping through the portal with Zara by his side. Together, they left the Nexus behind, ready to face whatever came next. But deep in the void, a faint, ominous whisper echoed, a reminder that freedom always came at a cost. The final trial. The portal closed behind them with a faint shimmer, leaving James and Zara standing on a barren, rocky plain beneath a swirling red sky. The air was heavy with tension, and the horizon was jagged with the remains of colossal structures, remnants of battles fought long ago. Zara's glow had dimmed after her monumental effort to free herself, but she stood tall, her posture radiating a quiet strength. "We're not safe yet," she said, her golden eyes scanning their surroundings. "The Guardians may be weakened, but they won't stop until they've restored the balance, or destroyed us." James, still catching his breath, looked around at the desolate wasteland. "So what's the plan? Do we keep running? Hide somewhere?" Zara shook her head. "Running won't work. The Starfield Nexus shielded us temporarily, but now we're exposed. There's only one way to end this." She turned to James, her gaze serious. "We have to face them. And this time, we have to finish it." James raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident in his expression. "Face them." "Zara, those things are cosmic enforcers. They're not exactly the kind of opponents you can just take down." A small smile tugged at the corner of her lips. "I never said it would be easy. But I'm free now, James. That changes everything. Their power comes from the laws they enforce, but those laws no longer bind me. That gives us an edge." "An edge," James repeated, still unconvinced, "against beings that can tear reality apart with a thought." Zara stepped closer, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "I'm not asking you to fight them alone. We do this together. Trust me." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know if this is bravery or stupidity, but all right. Let's do it." Zara's smile widened, and she nodded. "Good. But first, we'll need help." Before James could ask what she meant, Zara closed her eyes and raised her hands. The air around them shimmered, and faint, glowing symbols began to appear, etched into the very fabric of space. She chanted in a language James didn't understand, her voice resonating with power. The ground beneath them trembled, and a massive circle of light formed, its edges glowing with ancient runes. "What's happening?" James asked, stepping back as the light grew brighter. "I'm summoning allies," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the strain. "The Guardians aren't the only powerful beings in the cosmos. There are others, beings who have been wronged, just like me. Beings who want to see the old order fall." The light intensified, and from the circle emerged figures of all shapes and sizes. Some were humanoid, their forms shimmering with otherworldly energy, while others were massive, alien creatures with glowing eyes and bodies made of starlight. Each one radiated a unique power, their presence filling the air with an electric charge. One of the beings, a towering figure with crystalline skin and a deep, resonant voice, stepped forward. "Zara," it said, bowing its head slightly. "It has been eons since we last saw you. I never thought I'd see the day you'd break free." "I had help," Zara said, glancing at James. "But there's no time for reunions. The Guardians are coming, and we need to stand together." The crystalline figure nodded, its expression hardening. "You've given us hope, Zara. If you're ready to fight, so are we." As the other beings nodded in agreement, James couldn't help but feel a surge of awe and a flicker of hope. They weren't alone anymore. Maybe, just maybe, they stood a chance. But the moment of unity was short-lived. The sky above them darkened, and a deafening roar split the air. James looked up to see the Guardians descending, their forms larger and more menacing than before. They had recovered, and their fury was palpable. "You have defied the laws of creation for the last time, Genie," the lead Guardian bellowed, its voice shaking the very ground. "This rebellion ends now." Zara stepped forward, her glow intensifying as she faced the towering beings. "No," she said, her voice calm but firm. "This is where it begins." The battle erupted with a force that shook the landscape. Zara and her allies launched a coordinated assault, their combined powers clashing with the Guardians' raw, overwhelming energy. Beams of light and shadow crisscrossed the battlefield, each collision sending shockwaves rippling across the plain. James, armed only with his wits and determination, stayed close to Zara, doing his best to avoid the chaos around him. But as the battle raged on, he realized that it wasn't just a physical fight. It was a battle of wills. The Guardians weren't just attacking with power. They were trying to break their spirits, using illusions and whispers to sow doubt and fear. "You're wasting your time, human," a voice hissed in James's mind, cold and venomous. "She cannot win. She will fall, and you will die." James gritted his teeth, forcing the voice out of his head. "Not today," he muttered, focusing on Zara, whose light burned brighter with every moment. Finally, as the battle reached its peak, Zara unleashed a wave of energy so powerful that it momentarily blinded everyone on the battlefield. When the light faded, the Guardians were on their knees, their forms flickering and unstable. "This is your end," Zara said, her voice echoing with authority. "Your time is over. The cosmos will find a new balance, one that doesn't rely on oppression." The lead Guardian looked up at her, its glowing eyes dim. "You think you've won. Balance cannot be destroyed. It will always find a way." "Perhaps," Zara replied, "but it will no longer be on your terms." With a final surge of energy, Zara and her allies banished the Guardians, their forms dissolving into the void. The battlefield grew quiet, the air still and heavy with the weight of what had just happened. James approached Zara, his steps slow and uncertain. Did we do it?" Zara turned to him, her expression tired but triumphant. "We did. The Guardians are gone. For now, at least." James exhaled, a shaky laugh escaping his lips. "I can't believe we pulled that off." Zara smiled, her glow softening as she placed a hand on his shoulder. "You believed in me when no one else did. That made all the difference." As the two stood together amidst the ruins of the battlefield, the sky above them began to clear, revealing a vast expanse of stars. The fight was over, but the journey was far from complete. Together, they would face whatever came next, breaking the chains. The battlefield was silent now, save for the faint hum of energy fading into the distance. The Guardians were gone, their forms dissipated into the void. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, Zara was truly free. Yet, as she stood there, surrounded by the remnants of cosmic devastation, she felt a heaviness in her heart. James leaned on a jagged piece of broken crystal, his breathing labored but steady. Dirt and ash clung to his face, and his body ached from the chaos of the fight. But his spirit was unbroken. He turned to Zara, a small, triumphant smile tugging at his lips. "We did it," he said, his voice hoarse. "They're gone." Zara nodded, her golden eyes fixed on the horizon. "For now," she said softly, "but the balance they enforced won't disappear just because they have. It's like a wound in the fabric of the universe. It'll try to heal itself, one way or another." James frowned, pushing himself upright. "Are you saying this isn't over?" She hesitated, her gaze dropping to her hands, which still glowed faintly with residual energy. "The Guardians were the enforcers, but they weren't the source of the laws that bound me. That power lies deeper, in the heart of the cosmic order itself. If we don't break those chains at their source, it's only a matter of time before another force rises to take their place." James sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "So what does that mean? Do we have to go on some kind of interdimensional quest now?" Zara turned to him, her expression both serious and hopeful. "Yes, and I can't do it alone." James raised an eyebrow, a wry grin spreading across his face, despite his exhaustion. "Didn't think you'd get rid of me that easily." Her lips curved into a small smile. "Good, because the next step will be even more dangerous than what we just faced." As Zara led the way, she explained their destination. The core of chains, a legendary nexus where the laws governing the cosmos were believed to originate. It was a place no mortal had ever seen, shrouded in myths of impossible trials and ancient, all-seeing forces. The journey wasn't straightforward. Zara used her newfound freedom to open dimensional portals, each one leading them deeper into the fabric of reality. They crossed realms filled with shifting landscapes, worlds where gravity was meaningless, where time moved backward, and where entire galaxies existed as mere sparks in an infinite expanse of light. Through it all, James stayed close to Zara, his trust in her unwavering. But as they neared the core of chains, the environment around them grew more hostile. The air itself seemed to resist their presence, thick and heavy with the weight of countless eons of law and order. Finally, they arrived. The core of chains was unlike anything James could have imagined. It was a vast, crystalline sphere suspended in an endless void, its surface covered in glowing, interconnected rooms that pulsed with energy. Enormous chains spiraled around the sphere, each one radiating an oppressive force that made James's chest tighten. "This is it," Zara said, her voice quiet but resolute. "The source of my binding, and the binding of countless others like me." James stared at the sphere, awe and unease warring within him. "So, what do we do? Just smash it?" Zara shook her head. "It's not that simple. The core is protected by an ancient intelligence, a consciousness that guards it against intrusions. If we're going to destroy it, we'll have to confront that intelligence and survive whatever it throws at us." James grimaced. "Great. Another cosmic trial. Just what I wanted." Zara turned to him, her expression serious. "James, listen to me. This will be different from anything we've faced before. The core isn't just going to test our strength. It'll test our resolve, our deepest fears, and our bond. If we're not completely united, it will tear us apart." James met her gaze, his determination shining through. "Zara, I've come this far with you. I'm not backing out now. Whatever happens, we face it together." Her golden eyes softened, and for the first time, James thought he saw a glimmer of vulnerability in her expression. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything." As they stepped closer to the core, the chains began to shift, their immense links grinding together with a sound like thunder. A voice boomed from all directions, deep and resonant, shaking the very fabric of the void. "Who dares approach the core of chains?" Zara stepped forward, her voice steady. "I am Zara, once bound by your laws, now free by the will of another. I have come to end the oppression you enforce." The voice laughed, a sound that made the air vibrate with its intensity. "End the chains. Foolish Genie. The laws are eternal. You are but a fragment of dust in the face of HFY. James stepped forward, his jaw set. Maybe we're dust, but even dust can block the gears of a machine. We're not leaving until this is over. The chains began to move, slithering toward them like massive serpents. Zara and James braced themselves as the first trial began. The core unleashed illusions designed to break their resolve, visions of failure, of despair, of a universe that would crumble if the chains were destroyed. James saw Earth consumed by chaos, its people blaming him for the destruction. He saw Zara taken away, her freedom stripped from her, her light extinguished. But through the fear and the doubt, he heard her voice, steady and strong. James, focus. It's not real. They're trying to weaken you. He clenched his fists, forcing the visions away. Nice try, he muttered, but I've had enough of your tricks. Zara, meanwhile, confronted her own doubts, visions of her past masters, her failures, her fear of what might happen if she succeeded. But she drew strength from James's unwavering determination, his belief in her. Together, they pushed forward, their bond unshaken. The chains lashed out, but Zara's newfound power deflected them. James spotted a weak point in the core's defenses, a glowing rune near its center, and shouted to Zara, "There, that's the key." Zara channeled all her energy into a single, blinding strike, her light piercing the core. The chains shattered, their fragments dissolving into stardust. The core pulsed violently, its glow fading as its power unraveled. The oppressive weight lifted, and for the first time, the void felt free. The core of chains was no more. Zara turned to James, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. "We did it." James smiled, his exhaustion evident but his spirit unbroken. "Yeah, we did." As the void around them began to reshape into something new, Zara and James stood together, ready to face whatever came next. The chains were broken, but their journey was far from over. A new beginning. The shattered remains of the core of chains floated silently in the void, glimmering like dying embers. Where once an oppressive energy had loomed, there was now an eerie calm, a stillness that felt both triumphant and uncertain. Zara stood at the center of it all, her form glowing brighter than it ever had. Her freedom was complete. Yet, as she gazed at the fragments of the cosmic structure, a question lingered in her mind. What now? James sat on a piece of crystalline debris, catching his breath. His clothes were torn, his body bruised, but he grinned as he looked at Zara. "Well, I guess we just rewrote the rules of the universe." Zara turned to him, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You have a way of simplifying the most monumental events, don't you?" James shrugged, leaning back. "What can I say? I'm a glass-half-full kind of guy." She laughed, a sound that was light and melodic, free of the weight that had burdened her for centuries. But her laughter faded as her golden eyes scanned the infinite void around them. The chains were gone, but the scars they had left were still visible, faint traces of their oppressive energy lingering like ghosts. "The universe will feel this," she said softly. "The balance that the Guardians enforced, flawed as it was, is gone. It's only a matter of time before something, or someone, tries to take their place." James stood, brushing off his pants. "Then we make sure whatever comes next is better. The chains are broken, Zara. That's a start. The rest, we'll figure out." Zara nodded, though uncertainty still flickered in her expression. "You're right, but there's one more thing I need to do before we leave." She raised her hand, and the remaining fragments of the core began to vibrate. The glowing shards coalesced into a radiant sphere, pulsing gently in her palm. Zara closed her eyes, focusing her energy, and the sphere dimmed, its overwhelming power shrinking into something quieter. Finally, she opened her eyes and extended the sphere toward James. "What is that?" he asked, eyeing it warily. "This is the essence of the core," Zara explained. "The power that governed the laws of balance. It no longer has control over me or anyone else, but it still exists as a force of potential. It needs a new purpose. James took a cautious step back, holding up his hands. Whoa, whoa, I'm no cosmic lawmaker. I think you're better suited for that. Zara shook her head, her expression resolute. No, this isn't mine to wield. My role in this is done. The power should go to someone who understands what it means to fight for freedom, someone who believes in balance, but not at the cost of oppression. James's eyes widened. You're not seriously suggesting. I am. Zara interrupted, stepping closer. You've proven yourself, James. You stood against impossible odds, not for power, but for what you believed was right. That's exactly the kind of will this universe needs. He hesitated, staring at the sphere. Its soft glow was mesmerizing, but the responsibility it represented was staggering. Zara, I'm just a guy who stumbled into all of this. I don't know the first thing about running a universe. You're not running it, Zara said gently. You're guiding it. This isn't about control. It's about creating a foundation where balance and freedom coexist. And you won't be doing it alone. Her words settled over him like a calming wave. Slowly, James reached out and placed his hands on the sphere. It was warm, almost alive. And as he held it, he felt a rush of energy. Not overwhelming, but steady, grounding. The power didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a promise. The sphere dissolved into light, flowing into James's body and vanishing. He stood there, blinking, as if expecting some dramatic transformation. But instead, he just felt normal. Zara smiled. It's done. The universe has a new steward. James shook his head, a faint chuckle escaping him. If you'd told me a week ago I'd end up as some cosmic guardian of freedom, I'd have called you crazy. Welcome to my world, Zara said with a grin. The void around them began to shift, the remnants of the core giving way to a vibrant expanse of stars and swirling galaxies. The oppressive weight that had once defined the space was gone, replaced by a sense of endless possibility. Zara turned to James, her gaze soft. What now? He looked out at the vast cosmos, his mind racing with ideas. Now we build something better. A universe where beings like you are never chained again, where everyone has a chance to choose their own path. Zara nodded, her golden eyes glowing with hope. And what about you? Where do you fit into all of this? James smirked. I think I've got some learning to do. Cosmic Steward isn't exactly a title I trained for. Zara laughed, and for the first time in centuries, she felt truly at peace. Together, they stepped forward into the expanse of stars, ready to face the challenges ahead. Far in the depths of the universe, however, a faint shadow stirred. The balance may have shifted, but not all forces were content to let freedom reign. For every chain broken, there were those who sought to forge new ones. But James and Zara would be ready. After all, they were no longer bound by the rules of the past. Together, they would write a new future, one star at a time.